we're going to do a quick recap, if you will, for a few verses leading up in John chapter 13, leading up to where we're going to be hanging out and spending the bulk of our time today in John chapter 31. So if you want to go ahead and turn there, you can. We're going to be in John chapter 13, working our way up, and we're going to hit a couple other verses. But I'm going to go ahead and give you the title. We're going to come back to this, but I want to give you a title for those of you who are note takers, and like you have to have your title before you move on. This is for you, okay? I thought of you this morning. So here we go. The title this morning is Now That Judas Is Gone. Now That Judas Is Gone. So you can go ahead and write that down, put that in the top of your phone on your notes, whatever it is that you do. We'll come back to it again, and I'll actually mention it again, okay? But this is just for those of you who are like, your OCD takes over and you have to have it in order, okay? I thought of you this morning, all right? So here we go. As we dig into the text, now let me start by saying, man, Mike and Matt, they've already covered this text that we're getting ready to look at. These verses did an incredible job, but it ties in directly into what we're going to be talking about today. So I wanted to go back and highlight a few verses that lead us into where we're going to be today. All right, so in John chapter 13, verse 1, it says this: Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. Okay, now that phrase, he loved them to the end, that is a type of love that goes beyond all measure. Like there is no sort of measurement that you can put on this extent of love, right? So he loved them to the end, all right? I love you. This is a great exclamation that Jesus made. He loved them to the end. Okay, now we continue, all right? We're going to skip a couple verses. We're going to go to verse 4. Okay, Jesus, they rose from supper. He laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, he ties it to his waist. So Jesus goes over and begins to assume the position of washing the feet of the disciples. This would have been, as Matt had talked about a few weeks ago, this would have been one of the lowest positions that one would have done. It would have been the lowest of servanthood, okay? And so Jesus takes it upon himself. He walks over, takes off his outer robe, his outer garments, takes a towel, ties it around his waist, and then it says this in verse 5. Then he poured water into a basin and began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Now, I want to help set a scene here, if you would allow me to do so. A few years ago, about a year and a half ago, I had actually 2 years next week. I had an opportunity to go to Kampala, Uganda. Okay, it's the city, it's the hub of Uganda. And while there in Uganda, Africa, we got to spend about 3.5 days in what is the slums of Kampala, of Uganda. The slums are where just the poorest of the poor live. It's about 7 to 10 blocks in radius, and it's just shacks upon shacks. They're right on top of each other. Many times you would have anywhere from 10 to 15 people living in what would be a shed here in the United States, like a small shed. And so I took a couple pictures, and I want to help just tie this into today. So this picture here, this was my friend Lutaya that I was there with, and Lutaya had come up out of the slums. He was a product of the slums. They now call him the Prince of the Slums, and everybody calls him either Prince or they call him Uncle. But he has since gone and started. In fact, we help support him as a one church ministry. We support some of the stuff that he is doing over there as he has started 2 different adoption agencies, one for males, one for females, to bring them out of sex trafficking and gangs and bring them out. And he's just doing an incredible work over there. But he's taking me through the slums here. And while we were walking through the slums, we came up to this lady. This would have been what a typical house would have been like. There would have been 10 to 15 people, family members, that are all staying in this little house. Okay, and what she is doing is she's getting ready to prepare and wash her food, what she's getting ready to cook. And it's important because I'll come back to what she is washing her food and the buckets that she's using right now. We'll come back to in just a moment. But this right here, down here in this corner, like I don't know if you can see it well on the screens, but down in this bottom left-hand corner, you see there is a discoloration. And I'm not talking about the shadow of Latiah, but I am talking about that little circle spot. And that circle spot just happened moments before we walked up to this house. I watched a boy run across the street. Apparently, he had the urge to go, and he stopped, pulled down his pants, and went right there. And it's in that street that we are walking and caring about our day. Here's another picture that I have. And this is as we're crossing this little bitty homemade bridge here. And you can see the filth and the nastiness and the dirt and the grime and all of the stuff. Now this right here, there's a little bridge because there would sometimes be a little trickle and a little flow of water that was going down. And it was in this that the lady was washing and cleaning out her buckets to then prepare the food for the night. And it's in this same area that we are walking, and I am stepping in who knows what, who knows when, but every step I'm just getting covered with more and more filth and nastiness. And you see them walking around barefooted, just walking about and going about their day. And this is what I want us to see as Matt has already done so, but just reiterating this point, this is what Jesus would have been doing in this moment with the disciples. They would have been walking around along the streets and everywhere around town, stepping in who knows what, who knows when. Their feet would have been covered with filth, okay? And Jesus, he comes to Simon Peter in verse 6. And Simon Peter says to him, Lord, do you wash my feet? Like, hey, as you're going around the table, like, Jesus, I don't know about this. You're not going to wash my feet. And Jesus continues in verse 7. It says, what I am doing, you do not understand now, but afterwards you will understand. There's a greater purpose to what I'm doing right now, Peter, that you do not quite comprehend right now. Or you see what I'm doing right now, it's a metaphor for what is to come. It's a symbol for what is to come later on down the road. And then verse 8, Peter said to him, you shall never wash my feet. All right, there was Jesus, you are not going to humble yourself even lower than me. Like I am not worthy of this. You're never going to wash my feet. And Jesus answers him and says, I do not wash you, you have no share with me. You do not belong to me if I do not wash you. We're going to come back to that. Verse 15. Jesus says, I have given you an example that you also should do just as I have done to you. He continues, truly, truly. There's a truly, truly statement, which is imperative. It's an important statement. Anytime you see double words right next to each other, it means you better listen up. It means you better lean in, look into it a little bit more. But truly, truly, Jesus is saying, you're not going to believe this. Listen to me right now. You are not going to quite understand what I'm saying. But truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. And then in verse 17, it says, if you know these things, blessed are you if you do them. And then in verse 18, he says, I'm not speaking of all of you, because Jesus, I know whom I have chosen, but the scripture will be fulfilled. The things that are to come, they will be fulfilled. And he who ate my bread has lifted his heel against me. And this phrase, lifted his heel against me. I know we have some that are in this room that were raised on a farm. Anybody raised on a farm in here? Okay. Don't be scared. You can raise your hand in church. All right, it's okay. All right, how many of you have been around a horse or a donkey or a mule? How many of you know what a horse or a donkey is? Okay, we'll go there. Great. Okay. All right, we'll start there. Okay. What Jesus is saying here is this lifted his heel against me. What Jesus is saying, it's the same as a donkey kick or as a mule kick. And what Jesus is saying is this is a literal gut punch. It's being kicked so hard, like he has lifted his heel against me. He's getting ready to betray me, and it is going to feel as if I am literally taking a gut punch here. So, prophesying what is to come, in verse 30, we see that Judas, after receiving the morsel of bread, immediately went out, and it was night. Okay? That's where we got to last week, and Mike left off. And so now that Judas is gone, okay, there's your title again. Now that Judas is gone. Essentially what's happening is Jesus is there with his boys and he's saying, all right, guys, let's have a family talk. Like they're to the point now where a real discussion can be had. Have you ever been at a family reunion or maybe Thanksgiving or Christmas and like there's that weird, crazy aunt or uncle that are there and nobody is going to share or say anything too private or informational until they leave? And the moment that they leave, it's just like everything is just out in the open. Everybody starts sharing. Does that ever happen to anybody? If it doesn't happen to you, you may be that crazy aunt or uncle. Like you're like, no, that never happens. Well, I hate to break it to you. It's in this moment right now that Judas has exited and Jesus is getting ready to have a family discussion with his guys. He's getting ready to tell them, hey, what it truly looks like if you love me. What a true, authentic follower of Christ looks like. And so we continue here in verse 31. And these first two verses in this passage, so good. Look at this, look at what it says. It says, when he had gone out, so when Judas had gone out, Jesus said, now is the time. Now, right now, is the Son of Man to be glorified. And God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and glorify him at once. 5 times in those 2 verses is the word glorify or glorified used. Okay, it's almost like Peter Piper picked a peckle peppers, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself and glorify him at once. Here's the first takeaway of the day, and I don't want us to miss this. When God's Spirit is in you, glorifying him isn't just something you do, it's your heartbeat. When you don't have it, you don't. And it's obvious. Like when you are filled with the Spirit, when God's Spirit resides in you, then it should be your heartbeat to glorify God in everything that you do. Like your whole motive on this earth should be to bring glory to God in all that you do. When you're awake, when you're asleep, when you're breathing, when you're walking, when you're talking, when you're eating, when you're playing sports, regard everything you do, you should be glorifying God. It's your heartbeat. Hey, we have you guys know what this is? Heart. It wasn't rhetorical. Like some of the students are like, no, it's a heart. Okay, you guys know what this is the universal symbol of? Love. Guys, just coming up in a couple days is a thing called Valentine's Day, okay? This is for all the men in the room. Just take note, okay? This year it falls on February 14th, okay? So you can be aware of that. The universal sign of love, okay? This idea of love, all right, our heartbeat, okay? If we take that into account, what the heart does for us on a daily basis, even right now, as you sit in your seats, you do not realize all that the heart is doing. In fact, if we were to get real honest, the vast majority of us in this room haven't even thought one time about our heart. And the fact that even now, it's pumping. And as it's pumping, it is sending out blood to all veins and arteries so that we could breathe, so that we could live. It is keeping us alive. Let me tie this into what glorifying God should be for us. It should be our heartbeat. And every time that our heart beats, we should have it in us. We should be have this desire that should be so innate in us that we desire to worship him in everything that we do. So be who we are all about. So here's what I want to do. I want to look at a couple quick passages because we hear this thought of, man, I want to be a Christ follower. I want to be all in. And we look at Judas and the life of Judas and we could say, you know what? There are moments where we see that Judas, he exemplified those things. Judas did some things that we would look at and say, you know what? Maybe he was a follower of Christ. I want to take a look at some of the criteria of a Christ follower or maybe what it is not. In Matthew 10:1, It says this, and he called to him his 12. This is Jesus calling him the 12 disciples. And he gave them authority over unclean spirits. So he gives them the power, okay, to cast out these unclean spirits and to heal every disease and every affliction. Man, how crazy cool would that be? That you were given that power, that you could just walk into St. Thomas and just walk over and go, you're healed, you're all healed. Put all the doctors and nurses out of business. And some of the doctors and nurses in the room are like, no, don't do that. Continues in verse 2, and it says, the names of the 12 apostles are these. First, Simon, who is called Peter, Andrew, his brother, James, the son of Zebedee, and John, his brother. Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, James, the son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus. And then we see here Simon the Zealot and Judas the Iscariot, who betrayed him. The one that who is to betray him. We see it again in John. It says this, but there are some of you who do not believe. This is Jesus. Jesus says there's some of you that do not believe. For Jesus knew from the beginning who those were who did not believe and who it was that would betray him. You see, Jesus used Judas to do the works of the Lord, even though Judas was someone who was evil on the inside. We continue. In John 12, it says this, why was this ointment not sold? This is Judas. And we look at this moment in where the woman comes and she has all of this expensive oil to use, and she pours it all out on Jesus and begins to anoint Jesus as she's worshiping Jesus. And Judas comes, and Judas is saying, hey, why is this ointment not sold for 300 denarii, for thousands of dollars? We could have made a bunch of money and given it to the poor. And you look at this verse and you're like, wow, Judas, desiring to give missions to poor, or desiring to give money to missions and to the poor, go you. And he said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. And having charge of the money bag, he used it to help himself to what was put into it. He would take a little off the top every time. Matthew 27 says it this way. When Judas, knowing all that he had done, knowing that he had betrayed Jesus, we say, oh, well, you know what? A true follower of Christ is someone who repents. Even Judas repented. I have sinned by betraying innocent blood. I betrayed Jesus. Peter says it this way in Acts chapter 1, to take the place in this ministry and apostleship from which Judas turned aside to go to his own place. Another way of saying this, and some of your translations may read, that what Peter said about Judas was that he went rogue, that he went off by himself, and when that happened, that he went aside to his own place, he went to the place where he belonged, he went to hell. Because his heart, as we're going to see here soon, was isolated. In Matthew 7, it says this, on that day, many will say to me, this is those who claim to know Jesus, claim to be followers of Christ. Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy? Did we not teach? Did we not proclaim your name in your name and cast out demons? Did we not heal people? Did we not perform mighty works in your name? And then he will say to us, declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness. You see, we see this picture of what being a true Christ follower is not. You see, there are many teachers and people who claim to be Bible scholars and Bible teachers that on the outside may look to be as if they've got it all together and a follower of Christ, but yet the Bible warns us many times about false teachers and false prophets who are to come. Wolves who are dressed up in sheep's clothing. It's important for us to not take things as face value, but to look in, to dig in a little bit further. You see, on the outside, Judas looked as if he had it all together, but on the inside, his heart was not complete. On the inside, he was all about Judas and what Judas could do to make Judas's name known. You see, here's the thing. The heart of an authentic follower of Christ is this. Again, we get into this idea of the heartbeat, the heart of an authentic follower of Christ. I love this idea of authenticity. Words are hard. Yep, you're all saying it. There you go. Just yesterday, my boys, I've got two boys, and they were playing basketball. And when my boys play basketball, just as they do pretty much any other sport, they have to dress up like they are those basketball players. And so last night, they ran into their room. They're getting ready to play basketball, and my son comes out, my youngest son, he's 8, and he comes out, and he's wearing a Steph Curry jersey. And for those of you that don't know who Steph Curry is, he plays basketball for the Golden State Warriors, NBA. He's arguably going to go down as one of the greatest three-point shooters ever to play the game. He's phenomenal. He's great. Anyways, my son comes out. That's he loves Steph Curry. Maybe it's because of his height, because we are not tall. And so he comes out, and he's wearing this Steph Curry jersey. And we had some neighborhood friends in there, and I'm walking outside, and I'm the ref for the night, and so I'm listening to the conversation that's happening pregame, and Harper, my youngest son, he leans over to one of the guys who's in another jersey, and he says, "Hey, my jersey's signed by Steph Curry," and he shows him the signature that's imprinted on the back of the jersey, and he said, "It's worth a lot of money." And I hear this conversation that's playing out, and I walk over to Harper, and I'm saying, "Hey, buddy, truth be told, Mom and Dad bought that jersey for $10 offline. And honestly, like, the next time that we wash it, it's probably going to fall apart, okay? Like, it's so cheaply made, but we'll just order you another one for $10, you know?" And you could see his heart was just broken. I thought this was the real deal. I thought Steph Curry literally signed my jersey. You see, the thing about authentic is that it's real and can be proven real. There's some of us in this room this morning that we're walking around living our faith as if we're pretending that it is authentic, that it is the real deal. Yet Monday through Friday, we live our lives as something else. That our lives don't really exemplify the heartbeat of glorifying Jesus in everything that we do. That's why I love our mission statement. Our mission statement here at One Church is that we aim to develop authentic followers of Jesus Christ. Real, proven real, authentic followers of Jesus Christ, who in return develop authentic followers of Jesus. That's our whole mission here at One Church. And that's who we're about, so that we can be real followers of Jesus on the outside and on the inside. And it's because of the inside decision that we've made to follow after Christ that allows for us then to live it out in the outside. Peter says this in Acts 15. And he made no distinction between us and them, the Jews and the Gentile, having cleansed their hearts by faith. You see, a new heart that is to glorify God is being cleansed. It's being made new. And when it is made new, then it is able to glorify him, to follow after him. Paul says it this way in 2 Corinthians, For God who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God. That's our purpose. There it is. So that the glory of God can be made known. Now let's get back to John 13. Jesus in verse 33 says, "Little children." And he's speaking to the disciples here, and I love the way in which he phrases this as if to say, "Hey, boys, listen up, guys." Like, again, it's a family talk. He's there with his closest. He's there with the guys, and little children, guys, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now also I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. And so then he continues in this verse 34, and he says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another." Now I can just imagine the disciples' face when Jesus is telling them this. You see, all throughout the Old Testament, New Testament, there were commandments that were given. In fact, up to this point, there would have been 614 commandments that would have been given. And so I can understand the disciples as they're standing there, and there's this commandment that's being given, and it's that you love one another. I can see the disciples now just saying, actually, Jesus, you've already done that one. In fact, that's back in Leviticus. In Leviticus, it says that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I remember that one. But look at what it says. This new commandment is not just that we would love one another, but that we would do it just as I have loved you. Just as I have loved you, you are also to love one another. Now, here's what I want to ask, and this is not a rhetorical question. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another. How did Jesus show his love to the disciples? Had he died yet? He hadn't died yet, right? So many people, we read this text and we're like, oh, okay, so we're supposed to die for the ones in which we love. No, Jesus is saying, just as I have loved you. And what just took place? Anyone? Washing the feet. Washing the feet. Jesus just gave us the perfect example of how we are to love one another. Is that we are to wash their feet. Just as I have loved you. Now, I have this up here. What did Jesus do? You guys remember the bracelets? What would Jesus do? Right? I mean, like that's great. I love those. And some of you are like, I don't remember those bracelets. But I remember these. And as I'm reading this text, it's not a what would Jesus do. It's a what did Jesus do. He literally modeled it out for us. You see, authentic love for others means putting others first with a humble and selfless attitude. It means putting others first. Now listen, I grew up in a private Christian school. And in this private Christian school, we were taught at a very, very early age that in order to find joy, to have joy, that we must put Jesus first, others second, and yourself last. Joy. Some of you, you'll click at lunchtime. Authentic love for others means that we put others first. I could do that. I could stand in the Walmart grocery line and I can put others first. I can allow for others to go in front of me. But here's where it gets tricky for us, that we are to do it with a humble and selfless attitude. You see, now we start stepping on toes. I don't know if I can do it with a humble heart. Well, then do you have authentic love? I don't know if I could do it with a selfless attitude. Well, then do you have authentic love? John 13:6, Peter, Lord, do you intend to wash my feet? Really? That's what you're about to do? You're about to wash my feet, Jesus? What I am doing you do not understand now, but afterwards you will understand. There's purpose to this. There's a reason behind it. You shall never wash my feet. If I do not wash your feet, then you have no part in me. If I do not wash you clean, then you have no part in me. If I do not wash your heart, if I do not cleanse your heart, then you have no part of me. Go back to this picture. Walking through this nastiness, I made it back to our apartment, little hotel that night, and I walked in, and man, my shoes were absolutely filthy. They're absolutely disgusting. You can imagine everything that I'd stepped in and whatnot. The crazy thing is, like, I really wanted to just, like, take them off with my feet and throw them in the trash can, immediately. But those were the only shoes other than my nice church shoes that I had brought on that mission trip. Like, I need these shoes. And so I couldn't just pull them off with my other foot at the back, because I had tied them so tight as we were walking around everywhere. So I had to get down there with my hands and I had to untie them. And then it wasn't just one of those. I then had to take the shoe, right? Two hands, take the shoe to be able to pull it off. And as I threw them into the shower, I let the shower head just kind of run on them, and all nastiness and filth was coming out. And then I had to, in order to truly get the shoe clean, I had to pick the shoe up and hold it, and everything's just running off onto me, right? You get the mental image. It was nasty. It was disgusting. Maybe for some of you, those that grew up on a farm, right, that we talked about, or those of you that have a dog or have a pet, right? All of us know and understand what it means when you walk outside and you step in something that is soft, right? Even right now, like you are all thinking of that feeling, right? I got you. I'll help you out. Yeah. Now, here's the funny thing. That's just dirt. But immediately, your minds all went to the worst of worst. But you all know the feeling of what it feels like. Here's the takeaway, and this is where I want us to hone in with what Jesus was about, is this right here. Jesus, as he knelt down to the disciples, he's washing their nastiness. He's washing their filth. He's washing away all of the diseases, all of the just pure nastiness that they would have occurred as they had walked along the streets. Here's takeaway number 2. Feet stink and people do too. If we were in this room, the vast majority of us in this room, if I were to say, hey, I need you all to take off your shoes right now. Like some of you are looking at me like, I don't think so. I don't think so, my guy. It ain't happening. Some of you are like, yeah, I love that. Let's do it. I want you to think about this. If I were to say, take off your shoes, the vast majority of us in this room would probably do it. We would adhere to that. We'd be like, okay, I can do that. But then I say, all right, now I need everyone to take off their socks. You're like, hold up, I'm out. I'm out. This church ain't for me. And then I were to have your foot be examined by your neighbor's foot. Or not be examined by your neighbor's foot. That can't happen. Examine your neighbor's foot. And as you were to look, like nobody in their right mind is like, yes, please, I want someone to come and look at my foot and examine it. Jesus gives us this perfect example that you should also do just as I have done to you. This is the example. John 13:35 says this, by this example, by me washing your feet, by me humbling myself, by me making myself less than you, by this all people will know that you are my disciples. If you have love one for another. This is the action in which people will know that you are a true follower of Christ, that you have an authentic and a real love for me. The third takeaway of today, the sign of a true faith, is a willingness to wash others and be washed by others. A willingness. Like even as I watched the room and I was saying, hey, what if we had you take off your shoes? There was a lot of you that are like, probably not. There has to be a willingness. It's all about a heart posture. Like I've got this clicker right here, and Russell, if I were to take this clicker and I were to say, hey, come here, I have this clicker, and I were to hold it out for you like this, I could still take it away, right? But for me, it's a heart posture in the sense that I am in total surrender and I'm holding it out for you like this. And I say, Russell, come here. It's a willingness for me to let go so that you can take it. That's why I love when we worship. And I saw it happening this morning. When we worship, man, a heart posture of total surrender. Saying, Lord, please, your will be done, not mine. Surrender. This is the universal sign for surrender. You guys know that, right? Lord, your will be done. It's a willingness. It's a heart posture. Your heart has to be wanting to, a desire to worship and glorify him. And when that happens, we will wash others. Some of you are like, yep, check, I can do that. Like some of you would way rather have go wash someone else's feet than to have your feet washed. Hang with me here. Some of you are way more willing to walk in to a connect group and say, hey, you know what? I just want to hear all about you today, but I'm not sharing anything about me. Hey, I'm going to wash your feet. Hey, I want to celebrate you. Hey, we want to do all this for you. But you know what? Me, I'm good. I'm good. You see, one of the excuses that we like to use, if people saw how ugly my feet were, they wouldn't love me. I use the feet analogy here, but it's you insert in whatever you want. Hey, if people only knew my past, if they only knew where I had been, there's no way they could love me. If people only knew my struggles, there's no way that they could love me. Solomon, the wisest man to ever walk the earth other than Jesus, says in Proverbs 18, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. We see this true of Judas. Judas isolated himself. He was drawn back. He was all about self and self-righteousness and self-motivated desires, and he did not care about others enough. Man, we go to different conversations. Mike's had them, Matt's had them, I've had them, Steve's had them. We have these conversations. Some of you have probably heard them too, where people are in the church. They come to the church building and they're there at the church. And then while they're there, something happens or somebody hurts them, hurts their feelings, which is bound to happen because here's the truth. No one in this room is perfect. We're all sinners saved by grace. So we hear this excuse. I've been church hurt. We talk about this at staff or amongst our teaching team a lot, like this phrase, I've been church hurt. Man, Judas hurt Jesus. Jesus knew he was going to get hurt. But saying I've been church hurt by somebody within the confines of a church building is like saying I've been job hurt because my boss made me work extra hours. I've been job hurt because I didn't get the raise that I wanted. Been school hurt. I got an extra dose of homework this weekend that I wasn't planning on it. That teacher really hurt my feelings. I'm not going to school anymore. I've been school hurt, right? Let me know how that works out for you. Sports team, right? Insert in. I'm a Kentucky Wildcat sports fan. It's all right. There it is. All right. Sorry. Yes, thank you. Take them all. I've been hurt. And every weekend it seems that they find a new way to let me down. But every weekend I still turn the TV on expecting for something better to happen. I went to a Walmart just this last week, and while at Walmart, the cashier charged me too much for what I was buying, what I was purchasing. I got out to the truck, and realized it as I looked at the receipt then. Oh man, I got charged too much. What did I say? Oh, I'm done. I'm Walmart hurt. I'm never going back. Right? You see how it sounds? But yet we use that all the time. We have that excuse thrown at us. The church hurt me. No, a sinful person inside the church hurt you. You see, in our teaching team, I'm going to give Mike credit for this. Mike threw out this, and it's so good as our fourth takeaway. People want the benefit of community without the sacrifice of community. People want the benefit of community. They want all that community involves, but they're not willing to sacrifice in order to get it. They're not willing to sacrifice. They're not really ready to be a family, to delve into more. Here's the reality of it, guys. We were created for more. We were made for more. You see, that's why here at One Church, I love it because we are all about worship one, serve one, connect one. We desire to see everyone here worship 1 hour a week. And then in doing so, that you would get plugged in to a connect group. And in our connect groups, what if, Ken's back there somewhere. What if, Ken, who oversee our connect groups here, what if our connect groups, we walked into connect groups, and instead of us at our prayer request time saying, hey, I would really ask for prayer for my sweet old dear Aunt Sally. She has a big hangnail, and it's really bothering her. I just really need prayer for her. What if that prayer turned into, hey guys, I really need you to pray for me. My heart's not in the right posture. Hey guys, I really need you to pray for me. My marriage is on the rocks. I don't know how I'm going to make it through another night. Hey guys, I really need you to pray for me. My kids are walking through some tough things right now at school. What if our heart posture turned from the surface level, and in connect groups, we begin to delve into the purpose of connect groups, and that is to be able to wash and to be washed by others. Now, I love my connect group. My connect group has been through me and with me through a whole lot of things. My connect group, my guys especially, know me arguably more than I know me. And the cool thing about my connect group is that we walk in, and it's no rules in our connect group. We walk in, and when we sit down in the living room, once we get going, everybody knows it's no rules. And things get shared, things get said, they stay in that room. And when we walk out of the room, we all love each other with an authentic love, a real love, because we all desire to wash each other's feet and to be washed by each other. The guys will call me out, the 3 other guys in our group. Tyler, we know this about you this last week. I'm like, guys, my wife is right there. They're there to hold me accountable. They're there to wash my feet. They're there so I can share the filth. So it's not just me trying to do it alone in isolation. And because of us connecting one, then we get to serve one. Somewhere in this building, outside this building, through our connect groups, we have so many different opportunities and ways here at One Church that you can get involved and serve. Through worship team, through tech team. Lee was in here first service, through kids ministry. Matt, through student ministry. There are many ways. Greeting team, coffee team, like I can keep going. But we desire to see everyone worship one, serve one, and connect one. You see, it's in our connect groups when the rubber hits the road and things get real. And it's because of that Jesus says this, by this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another.